And here we are, Casey Newton, in San Francisco. How is the situation in San Francisco, Casey?
Well, the city moved relatively quickly for an American city to lock things down, and so we have had fewer cases than a lot of places. And fortunately, our hospitals have been able to handle what has happened so far. As of yesterday, we're starting to talk about reopening restaurants next month and kind of easing some of the restrictions. So we're hoping that we're through the worst of it. Although, of course, everyone fears that there might be a second wave coming later this year.
Got it. Also, I mean, the world is looking to San Francisco all the time and to Silicon Valley in this kind of situation because think, all right, Silicon Valley will find a solution. It's finding a solution to everything. Let's find a solution to pandemics. Did you see a lot of companies moving to develop stuff in the pharma world?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think probably the biggest thing that Silicon Valley has done so far has been this collaboration between Apple and Google, working on the exposure notification system, which is now live
Mm.
on iOS and Android, and around the world, people are going to be using it to kind of passively collect matches with people who may later find out that they have COVID-19, and then be able to easily notify those people that they may have been exposed. So that's a really rare collaboration between two giants like Apple and Google. And now we just have to see if it's effective or not.
Got it. And by the way, Casey, I was just distracted by the by the comments. I've always, I live this split life where I live stream like 4 hours, 5 hours a day, and I always have this chat on this side. So I always, keep an eye, and sometimes I get distracted by trolls, and But anyway, no, I was thinking that you have a fantastic newsletter. It's
Thank you.
really a great newsletter. It's also really long.
Yeah.
So I always think, how long does it take to
Yeah.
write that newsletter every day? How much time? How long does it take to write it?
So I like the newsletter usually takes me about half the day to put together. I have somebody helping me with the links at the bottom of the newsletter. So I spend most of my time putting together the top part, which is a column that often has original reporting in it, analysis, and then also sort of links to other great stuff that I've been reading. But it's definitely, on some days the main thing, or sometimes even the only thing that I'm doing.
But I was talking, for instance, with are you familiar with Azim Azar,
Oh,
exponential
yeah.
review?
Hmm.
Yeah, Azim is writing a lot about AI and so on. Him, for instance, he started his newsletter. It was free in beginning, and then he shifted to a pay subscription model,
Right.
or I think, or is partly free, and then you can subscribe to have more premium access. But your newsletter is still free, or
Yeah.
am I wrong?
Yeah, I think of it as a service of The Verge. The Verge is a really big website. We reach tens of millions of people a month. We have an advertising business, and it's part of Vox Media, which makes money in other ways. We have podcasts, we have events. And so, we definitely have some ideas around how the interface can make money for Vox Media over time. We're looking at doing some live virtual events this year. We've done some other live events in the past. So we're still kind of ramping that up. But my hope is definitely that the interface becomes a really self-sustaining project over time.
Got it. Also because it's different from. I mean, I follow a lot of newsletters, and there are some great newsletters. I don't know, Benedict Evans
Mhm.
as a good newsletter, but you have a different angle that I like, because I mean you go deep, and I think about the Facebook moderators, for instance, issue. You're not afraid of trying to dig deeper, and being also critic with the tech giants. So I don't know. It's a style that I appreciate.
Thank you.
Sometimes it's too much for me,
Yeah,
because it's
yeah,
too.
yeah,
I say, all right,
yeah.
Casey, today I give up. Today I just want to watch a little Netflix video, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's always a lot of food for thought. And one of this topic was the topic of today.
Yeah.
So the Donald
Mhm.
is going after the tech titans. What's going on there?
Yeah. So the president over the past couple of days has tweeted a few things that Twitter has found to be against its guidelines. And so for the first time, Twitter has taken action against the president's tweets. The first tweets were about the upcoming election here in the United States, and Trump tweeted suggesting that if people voted by mail, that there would be massive fraud, as what I think Twitter saw as kind of part of a disinformation campaign to discourage people from voting, which is against Twitter's rules. And so Twitter added links underneath the president's tweets, pointing them to some added information that sort of explains why there is not massive fraud when mail in voting is allowed. Trump then sort of went nuclear, kicked and screamed, signed an executive order saying that he was going to, regulate the companies. It's not clear that he has any legal power to do that, but it's all going to have to play out in the courts. So that was yesterday. And then late at night, in an unrelated thing, we have some civil unrest in Minnesota after the death of a black man at the hands of police. And Trump tweeted something to the effect of, when the looting starts, so does the shooting, suggesting that there was going to be violence against protesters. And so Twitter, for the first time, hid Trump's tweets behind a little interstitial notice. So you have to click on it if you want to see the tweet. And then Trump, his people reposted the tweet to the official White House account. And then Twitter put that behind a banner as well. So there's kind of a game of whack-a-mole going on. And it's absolutely wild.
That's, it's crazy. But on one side, of course, I live in UK, and my perspective about Donald is a little bit like, all right, Donald did another weird thing, all right, yeah, he is drinking I don't know, whatever, poison. It's like, all right, another Donald thing. It's like a bit of like Boris Johnson, like
right.
It's not even I don't even think too seriously about what he's doing, but obviously he's United States president, so this is very important. My question for you, Casey, is what happened if like Twitter decide to say, okay, I will kill this account. We closed, Alex Jones account, and now we close Donald Trump account because we don't want fake news anymore on this platform. Is this something that can happen, or basically it can't happen?
It is something that can happen, and Twitter has said that its rules apply to everyone equally, and that it will take the action that it has to, based on people violating its rules. I have historically thought that this would be a pretty unlikely thing to happen because platforms would rather have the maximum number of people on rather than off, right? It's good for business when you have a lot of people on your platform, and particularly when you have high profile people, politicians, elected officials, right? You want them to be having a debate. But if you're going to use the platform to threaten mass murder in a way that the president did today, you may have to take an action and you may have to ban him. This all seems like it's escalating pretty quickly. And so I think it's very hard to predict what this will look like even next week. I suspect this weekend will probably be pretty busy with a lot of back and forth too. The one thing I would say though is that I think the question of how do you practically ban the president gets hard, because let's say you ban Trump's account, he'll probably just post somewhere else, probably Facebook to start, but there are other platforms where he could post. And then people will write bots that just screenshot every post, and then the bot will auto post it to Twitter. So will those bots be banned as well, right? Like you could see how this could just become a game of whack-a-mole that could be hard for Twitter to win.
Got it. By the way, in the comments, Chiara is saying, what will happen if Twitter closes its account? Will Donald go to TikTok? That would be fun. And immediately Phil live in, Phil was the founder of Evernote, I think.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
Congrats. Trump is already on Twitter. Yeah. The guy is called Sarah Cooper. So we are already with the right mood here.
Yes. Yeah, Sarah Cooper is fantastic, and people should check out her stuff if they have not already. Yes, I think I think in real life, Trump would be unlikely to join TikTok because it's owned by a Chinese company and he has a trade war going with China. But there's also Gab, which was sort of conceived as a free speech alternative to Twitter. After some other drama on Twitter, so that's where I would be looking for him first if he got banned from Twitter.
But the big question here, Casey, for me is what's the real role of these companies? I mean, wouldn't it be easier if Twitter or Mark with Facebook and everyone else say, look, we are, I don't know, like the New York Times. This is our, editorial. It's like The Verge. That's our way of seeing things. These are our guidelines, and that's it. We're not a platform anymore. I know that is not sexy for the market, but I mean, sooner or later, they will have to take a position. Or do you think they can stay in this neutral zone where I heard Mark Zuckerberg say today that is not a social network role to decide what the truth is, which also makes sense. I mean,
yeah, I think that Twitter and Facebook's policies are actually pretty similar on this stuff. Like they both ban misinformation about the election. They both ban threatening mass violence. And I think an open question today is why hasn't Facebook taken any action against these posts? And that's something I'm going to try to figure out once this podcast is over. But in terms, what is the job of a platform to do? In a lot of ways, it's like any other business. You're going to set rules of conduct, right? If I walk into your bakery or your flower shop and I say, there's going to be a mass shooting when the looting stops, you might say, hey, you're making my other customers uncomfortable. You need to leave. And I think what you're seeing right now on Twitter is something analogous to that, right? The president is saying very threatening things about a large group of people, and it makes a lot of other people uncomfortable. And it's particularly disturbing given that Trump actually does, get to order the National Guard around, right? Like this could result in real world violence against real people. And so for that reason, I actually think it's admirable that Twitter is trying to enforce these policies that it put on the books, presumably for this exact reason.
Yeah. Another comment here, a question for Casey. Is it right, is related to what we were talking about, is it right that a private company can decide what is right or wrong? We now have an elected president versus a corporation. By the way, I think Donald, I think he could call I don't know, the Pentagon and say, look, go to go to Jack Dorsey home if he's not stopping to block me or pop-upping me. I mean, is the president of the United States, or he calls you to he can convocate to the White House and say, look, that's it. Now you do what I want. So I don't know. It's a tricky situation.
Yeah, I mean, on that question of, is it right for a private company to decide? Private companies make these kinds of decisions all the time. And for most of the history of the internet, we had countless web forums that would all set their own rules about what was allowed and what wasn't. On Reddit today, different Reddits have different rules. Some of them enable you to say very profane, insulting things. Some people don't, some forums don't allow that. And I think that kind of enables a better environment. I think what's different here is that we have some platforms that have grown really large, and so they feel different, right? They feel more like kind of state actors or state agencies than they feel like private companies. At the end of the day, though, they are private companies. And a lot of the changes that people want to make to the internet to take care of this perceived problem with Facebook or Twitter would wind up affecting the rest of the internet in ways that people might not like. So I think people just need to be really careful when they start talking about how to regulate the internet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. On the other side, I try to sympathize with Donald, okay, for a second. Also because in chat, I don't tell you everything that's coming out of the chat, but all right. Just one comment. Hillary Chefs Roselli, she said, Trump on free speech, everyone has a right if they share my views. So this is probably his position. But on the other side, I was reading, I think yesterday, I don't know if it was in your newsletter, maybe, Casey, I was reading that there are a lot of tech people like Eric Schmidt or Ray Hoffman supporting Biden. So they don't have a Trump vision of the world. So you find yourself, you're the president of the United States, and you are competing against some of the smartest tech people in the world that can create huge platforms that can have an impact and an influence on the election. So I don't know. This is a tricky situation also to deal with. So I imagine that he wants to take power off of this company to protect his campaign. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that sort of underestimates the amount of power that Trump has, right? Trump has 80 million followers on Twitter.
Right.
Joe Biden has 8 million followers. Trump is the subject on Twitter every day, all day long in America, no matter which accounts you're following. He gets more engagement on Facebook than any other person, right? And so, this idea that because some people who work for these companies don't plan on voting for the president, that he's being discriminated against when he's actually dominating all of the conversation on the platforms, I just think is laughable. And it's an attempt to distract from the issue, right? The real issue is
Right.
not that Trump is being discriminated against, it's that he's threatening violence against a large group of people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Let's change subject for a second. Otherwise, I'll stay on politics for 1 hour. And it's not, it's not the case. I was curious to understand your opinion about what's going on with this post-COVID situation, COVID and post-COVID. I say post-COVID because, for instance, in Italy is already a bit of post-COVID. They started to reopen a lot of things. Also here in UK, in June they should start to reopen stuff. And what do you think is the new situation? We saw like Zoom. I saw the other day that valuation of Zoom was the valuation of the biggest air companies in US combined. That's crazy. I mean, I remember when Bill Tai was telling me about Zoom years ago. He was investing there, and I thought, well, come on, really? And yes, really, they become huge. So what are the new trends that you see coming out from this COVID situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think in America and much of the world, it still feels like we're very far from post-COVID. Like, I don't think we'll actually be post-COVID till there's a vaccine, or at least like much better treatments than we currently have today. And across much of the world, people are still under orders to stay at home. I am under such an order, for example.
Right.
And that has changed the way a lot of people are using technology. So, one of the obvious ones is e-commerce, right? You look at the e-commerce companies in the United States, and they're all doing business every day that's similar to what they were doing like during the Christmas season in America last year. So that's huge. And then the other huge one is, okay, well, now we have to work from home too. So what are the new tools we need? Zoom is one of them. But people need webcams. They need Pelotons and other kind of home gym equipment so that they can, get exercise during the day. Basically, we're shrinking all of life down into what can be done inside of a home, and there is opportunity there for businesses.
Yeah, I was talking a couple of weeks ago with Harley Finkelstein, the CEO of Shopify, and I was really impressed by the huge growth of e-commerce, because you have some countries that they were still very far from being totally, digital or believer in e-commerce, and now they are absolutely exploding. And I saw, by the way, this. What's your take on this? Instagram shop that is basically is using, I understand, Shopify. I haven't tested yet because it's not available yet to me, but
Yeah, so Facebook has been really excited to do e-commerce for a long time. They tried a couple things. They haven't really taken off, but people do so much shopping on Instagram already that I think it just seemed like a natural thing to do to make shopping a big part of the app. So within the next few months, I think you're just going to see a lot of price tags and a lot of shoppable items, particularly if you're the sort of Instagram user who follows a lot of influencers and people who are doing lifestyle content on Instagram to sort of make money and run their lives. So I'm of mixed mind about it. I think it is definitely it makes sense for them to do, but I also worry about what Instagram is going to feel like when it becomes a shopping mall, right? Like I don't personally go to Instagram because I'm like looking to buy things, but if it feels like that's all the app wants me to do, I might start spending less time in it.
got it. Let me stay on Zoom for a second because Nathan Shama, hi Nathan, Great stuff, Casey. How do you read Zoom's recent acquisition of Keybase? What's your take on open source software in Silicon Valley? If software ate the world, open source is eating software. And yeah, what's your take there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in there. The open source movement, very, very powerful, very cool. I would say that it hasn't quite eaten the software industry, and it feels like closed proprietary software is still making the most money and dominating at the most companies. You definitely have a lot of open source going on inside of Facebook and Microsoft and a lot of the other giants, but that's not stopping them from developing closed systems that they're selling for a lot of money. At least in Microsoft's case, right? Facebook makes mostly free products. As far as the Zoom acquisition of Keybase, this is part of a belated effort to improve their security, right? Once they went from 10 million daily meeting participants to 300 million daily meeting participants in just about 3 months, a lot of people noticed that they had some security flaws, right? And frankly, most other enterprise software probably has very similar security flaws. They just haven't had such a large user base poking around trying to find the holes, right? But now at Zoom, we've found the holes. And so they brought on some really talented people who are experts in cryptography, like the Keybase folks, to be part of that team that is going to ensure that that app is safe to use and can deliver on its promise of end-to-end encrypted video chats, which it wasn't doing before.
By the way, Casey, did you expect that Zoom would have been the chosen one in this situation? I mean, we were using Zoom for boring, bloody business meetings, where you talk with someone and, hello, you still there? No, I'm not there. Like the super boring stuff. And then I see my son, 10 years old, is connecting on Zoom. And I think, what's going on here? Would have been more natural that Facebook, with Messenger, like they're trying to do now, or I don't know, something else would pop up. Why Zoom?
Well, I think, on one hand, who knows, right? Sometimes things just win. On the other hand, though, like just use the other video chat products. Like I'm like you, I was already using Zoom for most of my video chats. But a couple of weeks into our quarantine here, I had to use like Google's video chat product. And it's just way worse, right? There's much more lag in between somebody speaking and the other person being able to speak. There was much more rigmarole involved with setting things up. The nice thing about Zoom is you can just send somebody a link, they click the link and the window opens and it's pretty simple. Google has now been playing catch up and has mostly kind of fixed that. But anyway, I think Zoom made the best product, and it's a case of you make the best product and you win.
Yeah, that's great. But is it Zoom in Canada or Silicon Valley?
Zoom is located here in Silicon Valley. I believe it's in San Jose, actually. So yeah, it's
Right.
nearby.
Got it. Yeah. Sorry, it's Shopify that is Canadian.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right. Because another interesting topic, I think, Casey, I wanted your opinion about it, is with people remote working. I mean, if remote working becomes something that is the thing. By the way, I remote work for 7 years now with my startups. I mean, it's 7 years that I remote work, which is anyway different than being forced to stay at home. I have to say, it's not the same thing. Remote working means that I can also go outside and have a drink and work on the beach. It's not that I have to stay at home. But the interesting point is, if you can remote work, do you think that companies that like Twitter that say you can permanently work from home will try to leverage this fact to reduce their costs? Because, for instance, in San Francisco, it's very expensive, all the real estate stuff. Is it a reason there, or is just my paranoid mentality?
No, I don't think that's paranoid. And I do think that there are going to be ways that businesses can save costs by not having real estate and kind of offloading that responsibility to their workers. And I think we need to look at that, right? Like there are a lot of workers who can afford to set up a home office, but there are a lot of homes, particularly married couples who have kids, like they're all working in spaces that are absolutely not built to be used as long-term office space. And so I think that's going to be a bumpy transition. I interviewed Mark Zuckerberg about this subject a couple of weeks ago, And one of the things he told me that surprised me was that because particularly the Silicon Valley companies still want to bring employees to campus semi-regularly just to have that face time with their teams, he said that the cost of doing what they're calling on-sites is actually so expensive that he thinks it's going to make up for a lot of their real estate costs. So he says that, for the other remote work companies that he's been talking to, most of them are not making a killing because they don't have a huge office. So, I'm still going to be looking to see like what kind of impositions are being put on workers as a result of all of this. But it's not clear it's going to be a huge money saver for the companies.
I like the fact, Casey, that you just call Mark and say, Mark, I have an interview for you. And he say, yeah, sorry, Casey, I'm available. Tell me when you want. You just do like that. You just call Mark and say, Mark, let's have a chat. And he say, yeah, no problem. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely cool to interview him. He has been doing more interviews this year than I think he has done in previous years. There's a lot going on, and this year is a good opportunity for Facebook to demonstrate that its vast size and power can do good. And I think that he's out there trying to show that they're doing good.
Got him. All right. Sorry, I have to answer. It's Mark calling me. I'm joking. That is watching our interview. Say, all right, let's have a chat finally. But, oh, wait, Benedetto, you see, let's go on this important topic. Did you send a coffee and croissant to Casey early morning?
No.
What time is it?
I got nothing. It's barely 8 a.m. here. I mean, a dozen donuts would have been nice, but maybe next time, Monty.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. If I knew I was getting a Deliveroo for you. What was the delivery service that most worked during this COVID period in San Francisco?
Let's see.
Here in Brighton, in UK, Deliveroo for sure.
Yeah, I don't think Deliveroo is available here. I could be wrong about that. The two big ones in San Francisco are Uber Eats, right, the Uber delivery platform, and then DoorDash. They both have huge problems and they don't treat their workers very well. But if you're going to do if you're going to do takeout, it'll probably be one of those two companies.
Got it. And tell us about your day in your usual daily routine during this period. How does your day look like?
Sure. So, let's see. Well, it's like so boring because I'm mostly just at my house. So I wake up, I take a walk around the neighborhood. There's a coffee shop that's reopened where I usually will stop, get coffee, come back. I'll read about silly things, and then I try to figure out what my column is going to be about for the day. So some days I wake up and like today, like I woke up, I already knew what my column was going to be about today because there's so much craziness going on, right? Other days it's sort of like, these two things happen. Maybe I can get a column out of this. But, from there, I kind of start doing a draft. And then every day's a little bit different, right? Some days I need to do reporting. I need to be on the phone a lot. I'm talking to sources. Some days I'm doing podcasts. In fact, I feel like I've done more podcasts during quarantine than I ever have before. Frankly, it's easy to say yes because it's just all sitting at my desk. And I miss human contact. So it's nice to have. And then I wrap up my column every day at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And my logic there is I wanted it to reach Silicon Valley tech workers while they were still at their desks, like back in the days when we still had desks, because I knew that no one could leave the office at 5 p.m., but everyone wanted to stop working at 5 p.m. So I could maybe get them for 5 or 10 minutes and have them read my newsletter. And most newsletters come out in the morning. Mine is like sort of a weird one because I send it out, at night, but it's been working so far. So I do that. And then it's like social Zoom calls, make myself dinner. I'm on an improv team. We do improv comedy. We've been continuing to meet over Zoom once a week to just try to, keep in practice so that hopefully we can perform again, who knows when. So yeah, just trying to make it work, but doing a lot of cooking, baking, playing video games, whatever I can do to stay occupied.
I didn't know that you were in an improv team. So you into stand-up comedy?
Yeah, I mean, so stand up and improv are pretty different. Stand up, it's usually you're writing your jokes in advance, you're
Yeah,
doing the same material over and over again, you're doing it by yourself. With improv, you're making everything up on the spot, you're getting a
gosh.
suggestion from the audience, you never do the same show twice, and you're surrounded by other funny people who are trying to make you even funnier. So I love that kind of collaborative aspect to it. And, it's just been really good for me to find a group of people who's doing nothing but trying to make me laugh all the time.
That's fantastic. Brighton is the capital of stand-up comedians. When they
Oh,
have to test their tour,
yeah.
they come here, like, I don't know,
Nice.
Russell Brand, Michael McIntyre, all these people. They come here to test the tour. So you buy the ticket, you go there, and they come out with the script, they read the jokes, and they cancel the jokes that they don't work. It's really interesting. And
Nice.
so I imagine you watch a lot of Netflix stuff during this period.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched Ali Wong, the pregnant
Yes, I've
comedian?
seen I've seen Baby Cobra. It's a very funny special.
Oh my gosh, I loved it. I loved
Yeah.
it. What are your favorite comedians?
Oh, well, you know who I love who just had a new special come
Huh?
out on Netflix is Patton Oswalt. He has this new special called I Love Everything, and it made me laugh so hard the other day. So if people just want a very funny one to
Yeah.
watch, I recommend that one a lot. I love John Mulaney, who's had a couple great Netflix specials. I love Maria Bamford, who I don't know if her specials are on Netflix,
All
but
right.
she has a different show on there called Lady Dynamite, which is really funny. So yeah, I like the weirdos.
There are some great ones. The paradox is that, for instance, I follow Joe Rogan as another topic I wanted to discuss with you,
Oh yeah.
and I don't find him funny as a comedian. I would
Yeah.
never tell him straight to his face because he's an MMA artist. So I would be scared telling him. I would say you are fantastic, but I find him so great during his interviews. But when I don't know, you understand what I mean? It's like some people have a different kind of performance when they perform live or when they are behind the camera with the microphone. Anyway,
Yeah.
Joe go 100 million. That's the idea. I mean, the figure should be 100 million from Spotify. How do you see this move?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting strategically. So, Spotify has historically been in the music business, which is not a good business to be in because you wind up paying most of your revenue back to the record labels that you're essentially renting the music from. And so that really limits the profit that Spotify can make. So Spotify started looking around for other businesses. And you look at the podcast industry, we're, I don't know, 15 plus years into it, and it's still really small. There are still people listening to a podcast for the first time every single day. So it looks
Yeah.
like a huge growth opportunity. And so Spotify basically had the idea of why don't we do the Netflix model? We'll go and we'll buy up all the best podcasters and podcasting companies. And eventually, if you want to listen to those podcasts, you're going to have to do it inside our app. And if you're listening inside our app, then we can serve you ads dynamically, right? The ad business for podcasts has typically only been this direct response thing. Here's a coupon code. That can make decent money for some people, but it's not nearly as big as the industry should be given how many people are listening to podcasts and how much time they're spending listening to podcasts. So Spotify thinks that they can, go invent a whole new ad business for the podcasting industry, and they just went out and landed the biggest fish in American podcasting to try to help them do it.
I'm impressed by Joe Rogan because the business model, if you think, I mean, his costs are zero. I mean, he has one Jamie who helped the production. I imagine one assistant to coordinate the guests, and that's it. So as a startup, it's really efficient kind of startup. Do
Yeah.
you think it's changing now with COVID, Casey? Do you think it will change the investment scenario? So the VC will invest less, or nothing change, business as usual, crisis as usual, and they will invest on good horses.
I mean, I think it's more the latter. If you are a venture capitalist, you're always trying to find the hidden opportunities. And I mean, it felt like within days of quarantine, the venture capitalists in my Twitter feed were talking about how look at all of the great companies that were founded during the last recession, right? Like in this weird way, the venture capitalists got very excited because they thought, oh, somebody's about to figure it out, right? And you do tend to see more entrepreneurialism during a time like this because more people are laid off, right? They're furloughed. They kind of have more free time to think. And then the other thing that's happening is that, venture capitalists believe that we are being kind of kicked into the future in the sense that more of us are relying on the internet for more and more things, right? So you're seeing this huge surge in e-commerce. Everybody's working from home. That's creating business opportunities that didn't exist before, right? Like Zoom is sort of probably the biggest winner in terms of a company that was relatively unknown before this and is now a household name. But there'll probably be more than one of those that is born over the next year and a half, right? So the venture capitalists want to see if they can get in on that action.
Got it. I heard interesting things about Clubhouse, but I don't have access. So Casey, I need an access to Clubhouse. How can I have an access to Clubhouse?
Well, I'll invite you if they ever let me in. I applied for access a few weeks ago, but they're not ready for these kind of hot takes over there, Monty. It's it's a literal Clubhouse. It's a bunch of people being excited at who they're excluding from the conversation. But yeah, it's an app that it's basically like a live podcast. I mean, the sort of conversation we're having right now is the sort of conversation that you can have on Clubhouse. The only difference would be that, instead of showing comments on screen, you could call on people and say, hey, go ahead and ask your question. And it's more like a call-in radio show. That doesn't sound, yeah.
But sorry, Casey, to interrupt you, but it's not something that like Anchor was already doing. I don't understand why there is such a huge interest in this moment.
So without having used it, I can't tell you exactly what the secret sauce is yet. I've talked to a lot of people who've used it who say it's pretty impressive. I think Anchor was sort of more about recording a podcast, and this is more about having a live conversation and letting people in. So kind of think like more like Periscope than Anchor is kind of how I would think about it if you've used that product.
Got it.
So yeah.
Yeah, so we'll wait for their invitation. But that's really unacceptable that they didn't even invite us. I mean, they cannot invite me. This is absolutely acceptable. But they cannot not inviting Casey Newton. I mean, I don't know. I will do a video against them now. No, I'm joking. But it's interesting. Sometimes you have these news that go viral worldwide, and people start to say, "Oh, well, check Clubhouse or check Meerkat." Do you remember Meerkat when?
Oh yeah,
and then
Meerkat.
You don't know if they explode or not. Like Magic Leap, I read that the CEO is out now.
But the magic is over. The magic is gone.
But I'm still, Casey, with this video in my head, the whale coming out from the gym, and I thought, wow, this will change everything. But what's the problem there? They just didn't deliver?
They really didn't deliver. I mean, very few companies in the history of tech, and I won't say Silicon Valley because they were a Florida company, but very few tech companies ever hyped themselves up to the degree that Magic Leap did, right? Magic Leap raised an insane amount of money. I mean, like well over $1 billion. And it was all premised on the idea that they were going to shrink this technology down and create this lightweight wearable headset that would do kind of mixed reality. So it was, a little bit augmented reality, a little bit virtual reality. And people who saw the demos, who I respect, said this thing is phenomenal, but it never got to that next step. They had management problems. There were sexual harassment lawsuits. Like the whole thing just seemed kind of cursed as of about 2 years ago. And so I was not surprised to see that the CEO is heading for the exit.
Got it. But on the other side, Elon is delivering. Are you ready for Saturday for the NASA launch with the astronauts?
Yeah, it will never not be cool to see human beings launched into space. So I hope the launch goes off well and everyone is safe and it works out.
Don't you think, Casey, that it is incredible that Elon Musk, he was doing PayPal? I mean, it was not in the space sector 10 years ago. Yeah. I don't know when did it start SpaceX. What's the general perception about Elon Musk in San Francisco? Is like God? Because here in Europe, if I can tell you,
Mm.
if you say Elon Musk with Tesla, SpaceX, often the comment is, all right, is a fraud, is a joke, is no, they lose money. This is the kind of comment. And when I see what he's doing, I think, oh, this is a fucking genius. I mean, I don't know how he does everything, but I don't know. What's the feeling in Silicon Valley? What do you think?
I think it is mixed. I think that he has some huge fans, and I think that even some of his big critics are willing to admit that the guy has done phenomenal stuff. Right? Solar City, Tesla, SpaceX are all incredible projects in their own right. And if they were all to work out, it would do a lot of good for the world, I think. At the same time, like the president, who we kicked off this conversation talking about, he can't stay off Twitter and he gets himself in trouble, right? Obviously he's not tweeting about mass murder the way the president is, but he is, like
Random.
saying a lot of weird things. And he's also like really hard on his workforce, right? Like he's just a tremendously difficult person to work for. It's like I honestly, like, I don't have a very strong opinion about him because I don't pay super close attention to what he's doing. It just seems to me that if he invested more of his energy in like reducing the drama and just like focusing on the work, I think he would see way
Yeah.
better results. Like, so I hope he does that, and I hope his projects are successful, and I hope he is like lower drama over time.
And what do you think? Okay, a couple of topics more, and then I let you work. Also, because I want to read your newsletter,
Yeah.
so you have to prepare. Do you already know what you will write about? You'll stay on top.
Well, so overnight, in the middle of the night, Twitter put that box over a Trump tweet saying that it was hiding it because it was promoting violence, and that is a first for us. So I gotta write something about that.
Right, got it. Tell me about these conspiracy theories that started to pop up during this COVID. You also wrote about it recently. I'm really impressed. If I think about Bill Gates, I mean, yeah, I did a video about Bill Gates a couple of years ago, just describing what Uncle Bill was doing and his philanthropy career and blah blah blah. The quantity of comments, haters, people that insult me and say you are part of the system, you and Bill. Like, I can call Bill, I can say, Bill, sorry, let's do this and that. I mean, I don't even know Bill Gates, but from a general point of view, you can't say Bill Gates. I mean, he could have stayed at Microsoft all of his life, and he decided to completely change life. So he's doing a lot of good, I'm thinking, the world. But he's in the focus of a lot of conspiracies. What's your take on all of these conspiracy theories? Also, 5G. 5G was another huge hit here in UK.
Yeah. That one is like, that's so weird. It's like, okay, well, we have the next generation of cell phone towers, and then people are like, oh, well, that must have been what's exacerbating the coronavirus problem. I mean, these things are often so ridiculous on their face, but look, the world is changing incredibly quickly. It's terrifying. And in circumstances like that, people look for easy answers, right? People want to believe that there is one hidden hand behind all the chaos who is pulling the strings. It's such a comforting belief. And, if you grew up and you took science classes, you know that the tendency of the universe is towards disorder, right? Like entropy reigns. And so there is often not a hidden hand, right? It's a miracle when human beings can coordinate to do anything, much less pull off massive conspiracies, right? So I think it's really unfortunate. Like, Gates is investing a ton of money, all of his energy, like his final productive years, frankly, in trying to accelerate the development of a vaccine that will save millions of lives, not just because they won't get COVID-19, but because the economy will recover faster, fewer people will succumb to other diseases, mental health conditions, right? So we should be rooting for the people who are actually trying to solve COVID-19 and not just spreading misinformation about them on Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Very good, Casey. Thank you so much for this chat. I let you go, and I'm waiting for your newsletter. I mean, I hope it will be great.
I hope it will be. And if for some reason you haven't subscribed to my newsletter, you can find a link to it on my Twitter account, which is at Casey Newton, or at theverge.com/interface.
Fantastic. The interface, honestly, one of the best newsletter out there. So keep doing the great